Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and we are now in a time where content is king, probably more so than ever before. We do now live in a world where most big releases seems to be sequels, reboots, and remakes. Now, those are all exciting and everything. There's nothing wrong with that per se, but are we getting to the point where we will see less chances taken on brand new games that we've never seen before? Well, according to a new report, it sounds like we might be heading into that direction, and we're going to get into that today. Then also, PlayStation had a very successful launch, extremely impressive stuff. So we're going to get into that as well as a couple other games that's been selling pretty well throughout 2023. Before we get started, though, do make sure to subscribe and ring that bell. That way, every time I post a new video, which is every Monday through Friday, it'll be delivered directly to your device. It's a great way to stay updated with all of the daily gaming news, so don't forget to hit those buttons. With that said, though, let's just go and jump right into the video, starting off with Nintendo and the highly anticipated comeback for Super Mario RPG. It's been a long time coming, but it will be out in just 2 days from the making of this video, and now we actually have some reviews to tide us over until then. It does have an 83 overall score on Metacritic as of this recording, which admittedly I'd say is a little bit lower than what I was expecting for just how beloved this game is, but overall, I mean, that still is a very good score. From what I've seen, though, it's being described as a very faithful remake with a few small changes here and there. From my understanding, they did replace some of the old pop culture references that maybe younger people today might not necessarily understand. Now, that might be a little bit disappointing for the people who grew up on the original Super Mario RPG, but that's still very minor changes, and it does make sense, all things considered. I mean, really, I think a lot of the people who will be playing this game will be playing it for the first time. Even for myself, I grew up in the 90s, but, somehow I missed out on this game as a kid. Now, I've attempted to get into this game a few different times in the past, but I've never actually gotten all that far, so, I'm looking forward to fully diving into this game and seeing really what just all the hype is about. Hey, only 2 more days. Now, next up here, we do have an update for Baldur's Gate 3 and the Xbox version. Just as they teased earlier in the week, they did, in fact, have some news, but they're also kind of stringing us along here. What they did is that they confirmed it will release on Xbox this December. So, hey, happy holidays for you Xbox players out there. Honestly, I believe that this game will win the Game of the Year, and I'm really just thrilled to see that it'll be available on most platforms by the end of 2023. When we all play, we all win, except for, I guess, Nintendo here, but, I'm hoping that will change once the Nintendo Switch 2 hits shelves next year. Keep in mind that Larian ported original Divinity Sin 2 to the Switch, and that was no easy task. So I'm kind of hoping that they'll do the same for Baldur's Gate 3 and the Switch successor. However, as far as the Xbox version goes, we don't have an exact release date just yet, but Larian did say to keep an eye on the Game Awards, where it will have its premiere Xbox trailer. Like I've said before, I understand the controversy that surrounds the awards and their nominees this year, but at the end of the day, just enjoy the showcase for what it is, and let's have a fun time with all the new reveals, which I imagine there will be plenty of surprises in the store. Let's go and talk about PlayStation here for a moment, though, because they had a monstrous launch with Spider-Man 2. I mean, I think that was always expected, but the thing is, this has been an extremely stacked year for gaming. So to see how all the dominoes fall is something that I would say is interesting to pay attention to. Which games will be the best selling when all said and done. And according to Circana, formerly NPD, Spider-Man 2 was the best selling game in the United States for the month of October, and this immediately catapulted it to the 4th best selling game in the United States for the entirety of 2023. Yes, you heard that right. I mean, again, that is insane when you realize just how stacked this year has been. And you don't have to take my word for it. Let's just go and take a look at the top 20 best-selling games here, or at least the ones that they can actually track. Unfortunately, they can't track every game, such as Alan Wake 2, which is not tracked by Circana. I'd actually be very curious to see how that game did. But nonetheless, you can still see a lot of the great games that launched this year. Hogwarts Legacy remains as the best-selling game for 2023. Still kind of hard to believe that game got 0 nominations for the Game Awards. whatever, I guess. But moving on, then you have Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which is currently the best-selling exclusive for 2023. Big congrats to Nintendo. They continue to kill it this generation. Then Madden 24, which is, I'd say, expected. Madden always nears the top on a yearly basis in the United States. And then at fourth place, you can see here you have Spider-Man 2, which has already outsold games like Diablo 4, Star Wars, and Mortal Kombat 1. That is extremely impressive. Those are some big-time franchises, and keep in mind, this is only tracking Spider-Man's first week of sales. There is a chance that Spider-Man 2 could end up being in the top 3 best-selling games by the end of the year, although it will be interesting to see how much change we get here in the next 2 months. As those holiday numbers comes in, we could see some shifts game per game, and we do still need to see the results for Modern Warfare 3 next month, and, just kind of knowing the power of Call of Duty. Yeah, we could see another game immediately hit that top 5 spot. Speaking of Xbox IP, though, that's kind of hard to believe, but they technically have 3 games in the top 10 now that they've acquired Activision Blizzard, possibly 4 with next month's results. So Xbox, they are a big player here, and I'd imagine that will be a continuous thing going forward. Out of all of these games, though, the one that I really have to applaud them for is actually Starfield, which still remains in the top 10. Out of all of the games in the top 10, not just on Xbox, but out of all of the games in the top 10, it's the only one that launched directly into a subscription service. Now, to be fair, MLB The Show also was in the top 20, and that launched into Xbox Game Pass as well. But this is extremely impressive, really, for both games. That's not something that we see very often. It's almost unheard of, actually. So, big congrats to Microsoft as well. I mean, really, though, just looking at the results here, PlayStation, Nintendo, and Xbox, they all had a big piece of the pie, and it's nice to see that healthy competition between the 3, which I assume we're going to see a lot more of that in the future. Okay, so let's go and switch gears here, though, because one thing that you might have noticed is that out of all these games, there were only 2 that were technically new IP, being Starfield and Elden Ring, which, even with those, you can say are at least familiar with the studios that made them. Starfield plays similar to Fallout and the Elder Scrolls, whereas Elden Ring plays similar to the Soulsborne series. So, I mean, even with those games, you can say that each studio does have an established fan base for that genre. One thing is clear here, though. Established franchises are the ones that are having the most success. And this is something that the game industry is starting to take note of. 505 Games parent company Digital Bros is laying off 30% of their staff, and they put out a press release where they said this: the video game market has evolved since the pandemic to be more selective in terms of new games, with consumers increasingly reverting to well-established intellectual properties and playing these same games for longer periods. Digital Bros' strategy has had to adapt to this new and evolving competitive scenario and will focus its efforts moving forward on the release of sequels and new versions of previously successful and established games, with a limited number of new, larger budget productions. In order to prioritize high quality and long-standing successful titles, Digital Bros has reconsidered the number of projects under development, and as such, will review the organization structure accordingly to align with the evolving competitive environment in the medium to long term to ensure maximum operational efficiency. So this is not what you want to hear if you were hoping for more creative, original titles. They're basically saying that they're going to take less chances on these type of games, and that is alarming for the AAA environment. Now this is not going to affect smaller budget games, but in terms of AAA, they're stepping away from taking big-time chances. From their point of view, they look at those as too risky because AAA games, they cost a lot of money. The truth is that if you have one high-profile flop, that can completely sink a studio unless they have something to fall back on. Just look at what happened earlier this year with Immortals of Avium. So I would say that it is difficult for some of these smaller publishers, but for us gamers, this also is in detriment to creativity. I imagine this isn't the only publisher that thinks this way. They're really just the only ones that's saying it out loud. And I think that you can really look across the entire industry to see that. There's plenty of other examples that shows the proof of that. A lot of publishers are primarily focusing on existing franchises now. We are seeing less chances taken. I mean, like I keep saying, content is king. It's one of the reasons that we're seeing these high-profile acquisitions. They want to gobble up all of that content. And then also continue to build up on their success with new installments. So we're really not seeing as many chances taken as we used to. But, you know, it's kind of weird because all these successful franchises, they had to originally start as new IP. See, I think the way I look at this as a fan is that existing IP is, yes, easier to latch onto. I don't think there's really any arguments against that. I mean, let's just take Mario as an example. You can have a new 2D Mario come out, and that's going to bring a lot of excitement, whereas a random 2D platformer, even if it's a very high-quality platformer, let's go ahead and say Pizza Tower as an example, is not going to garner that same amount of attention because you already have an attachment with Mario. However, even with that in mind, that doesn't necessarily mean that new IP can't have success. Pizza Tower did in fact have success. Now, that's not a AAA game, so that's not really making my point, but a lot of this really just comes down to quality. If you make a good game, and if you market it properly, gamers will come. I mean, just like a Control, which is a AAA game, and it was actually also published by 505 Games, that is a great game that established itself into a future series. You can say the same thing for Death Stranding, or hey, you can actually just take a look at this year alone. Lies of P. That is a game that recently released, and it had a lot of success. They attached that game to Game Pass, so it automatically got some money that way. And then it went on to sell 1 million copies in just its first month alone. In fact, they've already announced DLC and a sequel. So you can still make a AAA new IP and have success. Yes, that might be more difficult because you can't completely rely on a brand name. But again, if it's a good game, there's always a chance of it being that next big IP. So I guess for me, what I'd personally like to see is really just a healthy balance for existing and new IP, because I think that both are important. Let me know what you all think about this situation, though. Do you think that Digital Bros has a point or not? Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, do you believe the Xbox tax is real? This was trending on Twitter the other day, and as you can see from the results here, most of you being 58% indeed did vote yes. This is actually pretty consistent with the results that I got on Twitter, where 56% said yes. So what this tells me is that there is a growing distrust between the Xbox community and the media. And I really can't blame them. It does feel like Xbox faces more scrutiny than the other two platforms. And that's not just talking about reviews. If you paid attention last generation, there was a pretty drastic shift during the Xbox One generation where anti-Xbox topics drove a lot of traffic to websites, and it felt like the popular thing to do was to hate on the Xbox One, and it feels like we've not really fully gotten beyond that point. So it really feels like there's been this growing distrust for years. I mean, this is not just a new thing. This has been building up for a long time. Don't let that Starfield discussion fool you. The distrust that fans have is not just in regards to Starfield and what's going on with that game, but rather it's a series of years of how the media has treated Xbox compared to other platforms, and I think that fans are starting to become a little fed up with the situation. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget about the notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel to Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.